everyone, and welcome to the Evolve with Emily show YouTube channel. The best way to support the show on this YouTube channel is to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, and or share it with a friend. I hope that you guys enjoy this episode, and whichever way you choose to support the show, I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much. I hope that today's message and episode brings some bit of positive change to your life. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Evolve with Emily show. I'm your host, Emily Hayden, and today I have two in-house guests. So if you're listening, you really should head on over to the YouTube channel and check us out. I have with me today April and Caleb Guilliams. Welcome to the show.
It's an honor to be here.
Thank you, Emily. I'm so excited.
So they're just visiting in Houston, and I was so excited to hear that you guys were coming. I was like, yeah, let's grab a workout. And then I texted them last minute. I was like, there's no chance you guys can squeeze in a podcast, can you? And they're like, we'll make it work.
I right away was like, Caleb, like anytime at all, we need an interview. Let's do it.
I left early for you.
Did you?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
That's how much I value being here. And so,
Thank you so much. I appreciate that so much. I was telling April earlier today, I value community, and one of my number one goals is creating good community. Yeah. And it is here in Houston, and you guys are not in Houston, but I get it. Like when I really value something, like, hey, I value friendship, I value relationship, I'll make those efforts for that too. So thank 100%. You.
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome.
Can you guys give just like a quick little background, just so people know a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we'll kind of dive into today's episode.
I'll let you go first.
April, you're up to bat.
Well, I'm the wife of this amazing husband here, Caleb. We've been married for about 9 months now. We got married in June. And
which day in June?
June 5th.
Oh, okay.
June 5th. So it was actually my parents' anniversary, so it was kind of special.
That's so cute.
Yep. So I grew up in Wisconsin, and I grew up in a small family of 3 siblings. It was 2 for a while, and then we adopted a daughter, which was my cousin actually, and through blood, and it just worked out that way, and that was a blessing. So being able to grow up with her a little bit later on in life was awesome. And grew up on a smaller farm. So I was in FFA, and I was an FFA president.
Wow. I didn't know this.
I didn't know I would marry a farm girl.
Yeah, so I got that country in me and appreciate that so much. And also then going to school for an elementary teacher. So I taught for about 2 years or so, and taught me so many things, patience included. I thought I was a very patient person until I was a teacher. And then once I met Caleb, that kind of turned the tables a little bit, and I moved out to Denver, and now I currently work within Better Wealth, and then I also have some health stuff on the side, so health podcast. I do genetic tests and such. So
ooh, shout out your podcast.
So Better Health with April, Better Wealth with Caleb.
Okay, that
well,
is
we may have planned that.
So cute.
I had that plan for a while, but my quick story is I grew up in Wisconsin, the oldest of 6 kids. My dad was a PhD molecular biologist that had about 5 friends. Very smart. My mom was the exact opposite, had a ton of friends, wasn't a PhD. Mm-hmm. And I like to say I have the best of both worlds.
That's cool. Yeah.
So I was super, super grateful for my upbringing growing up. Always very, very short for my age. And I've struggled with reading. I still have a hard time reading. And so,
oh, really?
Yeah. And my parents had a conviction to homeschool. And so like I grew up in this amazing house of parents that loved me. My dad was always super hard on me. We were homeschooled, so I always thought we were like dumb.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
You thought you were dumb?
Yeah, totally.
I was homeschooled too. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
And so like now I look back on it and I'm so incredibly grateful. So grateful. Growing up, I didn't really know if I was even going to get to college and all that stuff. And so fast forward, there's a lot of stories within that. Worked at a chicken farm. Okay. So at 15 years old, I'm gutting chickens.
Gutting them?
Gutting them.
Did you have to kill them first?
No, I did not. I've never killed a chicken in my life.
Okay.
But, and just the audio good here?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, but I would get the chickens when they would be without feathers, and let's just say we'd process them.
Oh my gosh.
And so let's just say I was quick. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
45 seconds, I could get you a chicken ready to eat.
Wow.
Yes. And we got paid $1 per chicken. So we actually got paid per neck. So just imagine this, Emily. Like I'm going into work, I'm grabbing chickens, I'm processing them, I'm keeping the neck, and then I count my necks at the end of the day, and that's how much money I make.
That is like so hick.
It's so hick.
We're from Wisconsin.
And yet I'm telling you, I was hooked.
Really?
Because I started learning about efficiency. I started working hard. I'm 15 years old. I'm making $15, $16 an hour. I start reading about money and I start investing. I learn about option trading, and
Wow.
let's just say I started investing at a young age. And then when I turned 17, my mom kind of forced me to talk to this guy who he would just help me figure out what I wanted to do for college. And I remember sitting down with him and I was so nervous. This was in Wisconsin. It was like below zero. So nervous that I forgot to turn off my car.
Oh
Okay,
my
so I'm
gosh.
like going into IHOP.
I've done that.
Yeah. And I'm just like, and so a lot of people that know me today, they can't even believe this. And I had my questions written down, and this guy within 5 minutes changes my life, because he said, young man, you need experience. He was on the board of a community bank. With one phone call, got me a job at a bank at 17 years old.
Wow.
And to fast forward, I worked as the bank teller. I worked in every department I could. I was an HR nightmare because I wanted to learn everything, and I would work for free. I took over the bank's investment department when I was 19 years old. So at 19, when I looked like I was 14 years old, I was
true. He
helping,
looked like he was 14.
Yeah, I was helping people with their money, and
Wow.
that's like, again, there's a lot of backstory to that. But I just made a commitment that whatever I was going to do whatever I could to learn about how the money system worked. And it's crazy because a lot of people had this 10 minutes of horror when they would come in. They would be like, I have grandchildren older than you.
Right.
You know, and I had my own 10 minutes of horror because people are totally screwed when it comes to their money, like in every area. And I'm starting to think, like, why is it this way? And it's majority of people in the financial service space are just glorified salespeople for the bigger companies. Shocker.
Yeah.
And so I just, you know, being a little bit idealistic, I was like, there's got to be a better way. And so at 21 years old, when most people are lucky to have an internship, you know, I had this brilliant idea. I'm going to leave the bank and start a company. And that's essentially what happened. Is I was in the basement of a Papa John's building. We started this company
Wait,
called,
that was the beginning of
just
your business?
literally, and I could probably show you a picture after of it. We were literally in the basement. Our first office lease was $250. I lived at home.
Wow.
21 years old. I look like I'm 15, and I just knew that if people knew what I knew about money, there would be a line outside the door. You got to understand, this is almost 6 years ago, and so this whole internet thing is like, no one's gonna trust you because you look like you're a baby. No one's gonna trust you because you're on the internet. Like, and so I heard it all, but it's just one of those things where you can't unlearn. And one of the things that I just am really convicted on is, like, I don't want to regret life.
No kidding.
And so it's just one of those things where it's like, you know, if I fail, I fail. I'm employable.
So you just went for it.
I just went for it. And make a long story short, we self-published a book, which is helped, started speaking, started a podcast, started interviewing people that are way smarter than me, started gaining relationships. And now we have clients in all 50 states. We have 16 people on our team. We just acquired betterwealth.com.
That is so incredible. Wow.
It's one of those things where I'm just humbled to be here, and there's so much work to be done, but it's cool, and I'm just yeah.
So, okay, question. Where did this passion for money come? Not money itself, but like finances and handling your money. Where did that come from initially?
Yeah, so I was a weird kid. Okay, so at 17 years old,
She laughs like you're still weird, bro.
Still got weird tendencies, but it's fine.
Yeah. So I read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I'm like, okay, I need to make a mission statement for myself, and I'm obsessed about thinking about death. That's a whole nother conversation. But
I am too.
It just purifies your intention.
Yes.
Like, we are going to die someday.
Yeah.
So why the hell would you do something that you're not passionate about?
Wow.
So I made a mission statement that simply read, to help people see and reach their highest potential. I believe that we're created in the image of God. We have so much potential, and people are living to a fraction of it.
Why do you believe that is? Why do you believe people are only living a fraction?
Well, we're just mummies, like doing what we're told.
Totally. Like unconscious creatures.
And here's the other thing is, and this is not just like, I don't think money's the number one reason, but because people are not financially free, they turn their brain off and do what they're told. They go to college because people need to say they go to college. They stick at a job that they hate. They don't take risk. And it's because of the lack of understanding about money.
Yeah.
And the corporations, Wall Street, they're telling us one thing, and the way that they think about money is the exact opposite. And so they're saying, oh, like, put your money in this, compound for the long term, all this stuff, the 4% rule, and all that is just feeding into the monster. Like, no one in Wall Street's working off of retirement.
Wow.
They're doing the exact opposite rules. And so it's like, I learned this, and I'm like, okay, the reason I get so fired up and passionate about this is like, I don't just see this as a retirement because I think retirement's dumb. I see this as like, if you can unlock someone's ability to live intentionally and show up powerfully, that is what fires me up.
Wow.
And so that's essentially why I've always been like a person that's gotten into this, and it's gotten very exciting. And there's definitely downsides to being obsessive about this. But it's a fun journey.
Wow, that is so incredible. And I love how when I hear that, I'm like, we kind of do the same thing in completely different ways.
Totally.
That's really cool. How is it being a part? Like, so whenever you met him, April, how was it like jumping into this guy who's obsessed with like
And we have to share the story.
finances? Yeah, well, that's the story.
She said I wasn't her type.
Oh yeah. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so we are in the month of love. This is airing the day after Valentine's Day.
Amazing.
So we're also going to talk about love on this podcast.
So February 15th,
Yes.
it's my birthday.
Wait, stop.
Yes.
What are the chances of that?
That's crazy. It's the best birthday gift you could ever give me.
Wait, really?
Yeah, so
Oh
I'll
my
be
goodness.
26.
Oh my goodness.
birthday
Well,
gift.
happy birthday.
Thank you.
Everybody comment below.
Yeah,
I set this up.
Present,
Yeah, she
surprise.
totally texted me, totally rescheduled everything
This
just
would
for
be Make-Us Day, Emily. We have to do it.
give her those wife
So
brownie
I'll,
points.
I'll tee this up and then I'll let April bring it home.
Okay.
So, what is it? 6 years ago at this point?
About 6.
I'm like just starting Better Wealth. So I'm the oldest of 6 kids. My younger sister is graduating high school, meets April at a wedding. And so I'm just hanging out at home and April comes and I'm like, wow, she's like so beautiful. But here's the thing. She had her younger sister with her. And I totally am like, man, like it's too bad that she's a teen mom. I literally thought
You thought that she
yes.
was a mom.
And granted, like I'm 19, 20,
Yep.
and I don't look very old. She can, share that. And so, anyways, we just make a long story short. We connect. I'll let you tell the rest, and yeah, so you can take it from there.
Yeah, so we connect at his sister's graduation party. He, like he said, thought I was a mom, and
Well, a hot mom.
A hot mom.
Okay,
Like,
all right.
like, yeah.
He thought I was a mom. Despite that, he still came up to me and talked to me. And I was like, wow, this like 15-year-old kid knows how to talk. Stop. I was literally like, I love this conversation. Man, for a teenager, he can really like hold a conversation well. So we're talking and then I'm like, so how do you know Naomi? Which is his sister. And he goes, oh, she's my sister. I'm like, okay, like older sister, because she looked really mature for her age. He's like, no, I'm the oldest of 6. I'm like, got it. Okay, so how old are you actually?
Yeah.
He's like, I'm like 19 or 20. I'm like, okay, cool. But one thing about him was, despite looking so young, he led me around the house, showed me around where he lived. And I was blown away by how he led me, because there was really no other men that did that.
Wow.
Other than my dad, but there was really no other men that did that led me around, showed me, communicated with me in a deep way versus just this surface level conversations where I'm trying to keep it together, like holding the conversation on. And I always prayed before that day that I met Caleb that God would kind of lead me to the right person and kind of give me that sign per se. And I didn't realize how seriously I took that prayer. But when I drove away that day, I just had this crazy strong feeling inside me where it was like, that's the man you're going to marry.
Wow.
And
I
I was
got
like,
chills.
yeah, it was, I literally sat there driving and I'm like, what? God? Like, really? He looks like he's 15. Like, not the person that I like imagined in my head. And so I was literally like, God, I don't know about that, but it continued to persist. And I went home that day and I told my sister, and she actually talked about that in her speech at our wedding, where she remembered me coming home saying, I think I met the man I'm supposed to marry.
Oh my gosh. What did she think that you were crazy? Did she think that you had like googly eyes?
She was kind of like, okay, like, sure.
Yeah. Let's pray on this.
Yeah, like, got it. Can I meet him sometime?
Yeah.
So I was like, it was just the craziest feeling. And so from that day forward, every time I saw him at church, I was just like, wow, I really like this guy. Even though he looked so young, like I really liked him. And I grew to like him more and more, and we had great conversations. And so we went on a few dates, which were more about like friends, like friend zone.
Yeah, but they were intense. Like,
Yes.
They were intense.
seriously, like we're young, but we went through core values, kids, vaccines.
Wait, stop.
We literally, I'm
Like,
dead
immediately.
serious.
The
we
first
went,
date.
We went into, we knew more about each
Over
other.
conversation. I told you he could hold a conversation
Yeah.
very well.
Emily, I'm telling you, I had like a list of like 30 things I wanted in a future wife.
Yeah.
And like, I don't mess around. So
Yeah.
like date number 1, we talked about any
Let's
any
just
red
say
flags.
I checked
and
all
core
the
values.
boxes. So.
You checked most of it, yeah.
Telling your bad self, girl.
I saw the list. He was like, you had all of them. Got it.
Wow.
Yeah. So we met through that, and we actually saw each other for a summer then, because people were like, what are you guys doing? Like, you guys need to like date, because obviously there's chemistry here and you guys would be perfect for each other. And so then he started to pursue me a little bit more. Over the course of a few months, though, I began to have cold feet because I never dated seriously before him. And I was always very picky about who I wanted. And I think what it was like I lacked the vulnerability aspect, which you talked about earlier. And also it was just like imagining this certain person in my head. And so I began to be like, well, I don't like how he does that or how he does that. And so we went on a walk, and he thought it was going to be a conversation about how we were going to actually officially date. And I ended up saying, hey, I just want to be friends.
Wow.
And he was taken back a little bit.
One of the things about April is like she never was weird about it, which made me even more mad.
Oh, it made you more mad?
She literally was just like, hey, I respect you as a friend.
Yeah.
And I do not see, like, I'm not attracted to you and I don't want to date.
Hold on. I really love this honest communication. We're high-fiving for those of you that can't see. I just love that. I love when people are straightforward and honest, and you're over here like, no, I was mad.
No, I mean, I appreciated it.
Because that's how I am too.
Yeah. What was crazy is like, I like had a ton of feelings for her. And she literally, like, when she told me, it's like she turned a switch on, and like she literally treated me as a friend, and she wasn't weird about it at all.
Yeah.
And which is great. And I'm like, don't you pretend like we didn't have anything.
Yeah.
Don't you know, it's just one of those things. And also she wasn't entitled to give me any reason, but you didn't really have any good reason other than you're not my type.
And it was just the issues that I had to work through. And the whole time I was just like, well, I know that God wants me to be with him. And so it was my own selfish desires where I was like, well, maybe not though. Maybe it's not. And that feeling was so strong when I first met him. Yep. I was like, no, this is right. It was just my own selfish desires. And so we ended up meeting up for coffee because he wanted to see, you know, having a conversation. Maybe there'd be some spark still there. And about 30 minutes, he's like, okay, well, here's a letter I wrote for you. And I didn't read the letter for about 2 weeks.
I cannot believe you didn't read the letter for 2 weeks.
But like I poured my heart and soul. Like I essentially said, if I can summarize the letter, like these are the reasons why I think we're meant to be. And I did say in the letter, no matter what, like I will love you as a friend. And, you know, I'm just grateful.
It was like an
you're in
essay.
my life. Yeah.
And you,
it was an essay.
It was literally a 3-page essay.
Oh,
and
my goodness.
It was amazing. I mean, I was very like, wow, this is great.
So, okay, I want to touch on a few things real quick, if you don't mind. Because your story is bringing up a conversation that I had with a friend recently where she was mentioning how, because kind of what I see here, and you shared that like you lacked the vulnerability part. And I think there's a lot of women that will self-sabotage because they lack the ability to be vulnerable, or they haven't had like the safe space to be vulnerable. They don't know what it's like. So they kind of like freak out and they start like nitpicking at all these small things. Like this girl was like, I started to not like the length of his thumbnail, like his nails. like she started, she started to be like, no, that's just, I can't do. And I'm like, you can cut nails. I'm sure he would cut them, you know, but like, think about it. And like women that are listening to this, like how many of you guys start picking at these like little things that have no true meaning or value? Like if it's a core value, that's so different. Right. But when we're talking about like little things, like I wonder if, do you think that guys do the same thing? Like nitpick at little things?
But potentially not me.
Yeah, right.
It's one of those things where it's like if I find someone who like gets the vision and like is willing to be by my side and like I'm physically attracted to, like I can look past quirks. But I don't want to speak for all men.
Right. No, it's true. I'm sure it's different per person. But I just think it's interesting because I think there's a lot of people that have to work through that vulnerability piece. Totally. So how did you end up working through that in order to allow a relationship to develop?
Right. So it took a lot of time of, you know, I went on several dates and I was just like, he was always the standard in my mind.
Wow.
My mind always went back to him. And I did a lot of praying. And there was even one day in church where we were worshiping, and all of a sudden I just thought of Caleb. I was like, what the heck? I was like, God, why did I just think of Caleb? And I got these chills too. Like, this is so weird. And I'm like, if you really want me to be with him, God, like, have him here at church, because he was living in Denver at the time and I was in Wisconsin. And I walk out of the service, and there in the foyer was Caleb. And I was like, any other signs, God? Like,
you're like, I'm not sure about that.
Anything else?
Really said that.
But I mean, over time though, it just came to realization of like, okay, I need to overcome these things that are in my head. And I know that he's the right one for me, and I just need to jump in. Because that was the biggest thing of like, do I jump in? Like, making it official? Like, what if it doesn't work?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. That's so scary.
Totally.
And like, sometimes it doesn't work out.
Yeah. Oh,
But
100%.
I feel like if you don't take the leap, you'll never know.
That's right.
Exactly. And I was so glad we did, because over time, I began to realize that, yes, I began to push him away at times, realizing that I'm the avoidant type. There's like different types of people as they grow up. You know, there's the avoidant type, the anxious avoidant, the secure. And I was very much of an avoidant type of person. And so that means like, you can be all in, and then all of a sudden you start nitpicking.
Wow.
And then you start pushing away as they start to get closer.
Wow.
Because it's like, oh, like, I loved the game of like, oh, like, he likes me now. And then once he started to draw closer, I was like, oh, like, he's drawing too close now.
So are you the secure attachment?
I don't know. What
I
you don't know?
believe he
I believe
is.
you are. Yeah.
I think so.
I've read about those as well. It's like different
Yes.
attachment styles.
Attachment theory.
Yeah, I could definitely see you being like the secure attachment. Like,
Yes.
you know what you are, you know what you want.
Right.
You're good in that.
He's so secure.
and I actually can look back, and I'm grateful that we took this break, because it made me know who I am more, but then it also ultimately helped us build better wealth. Because I think starting a business in a relationship, like, that's just different than not. And there's no pros and cons, like, there's pros and cons to both, but as I look back, I'm like, I'm really grateful for that time where I was single, and it just, made me appreciate, I think, where we're at. But then ultimately there was some work that needed to be done that just took a time.
Yeah.
And in a relationship, it would be tough.
Okay, so you mentioned a few times that you felt like God was speaking to you about Caleb, right? So I actually want to talk about God speaking to you and how he speaks to you, maybe some different ways for both of you guys that God has spoken to you, and what it's like when you hear that. Because for people who are navigating a relationship with God and they want to hear from him, like, what are the different ways that you've personally experienced he speaks to you?
Totally. So for myself, he's always spoken through experiences, at least from what it seemed. Maybe that's what I take to more. Because I know there's different types. You know, he could speak through community and church, or various situations, and it was always experiences for me. For example, I began sponsoring a child, I began tithing, and I remember feeling like, like, I was a very frugal person, and I started to tithe, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like, I'm sending this chunk of money to the church, and I know it's good, but like, my bank account's going down a little bit from this, and I had hesitation there, but I still continued with it anyway. And then, and this was in the beginning of college, all of a sudden I got a phone call about a week or two later, and my grandma was like, hey, April, like, hope you're doing well. I heard you're sponsoring a child and like getting to church. She's like, that's so amazing. I'm so proud of you. And she's like, I would like to pay for all your college.
What?
Yeah. And I was like, okay, God, like, thank you for providing.
Wow.
So it was always seemed to be through experiences. I mean, there's numerous other examples.
That's so
but like,
cool.
that's one that always stands out where I'm like, he's just incredible how he just provides for you. If you're like not sure of something and you're not sure if it's the right thing to do, or maybe it's like your own sinful desire of like, like, I don't really want to do this. But then you maybe go for it, and he'll be like, see, this is good. You know, I will provide.
Wow, that's really cool. And what I hear from you too is that it often has come for you after obedience, which sometimes requires a little bit of just stepping out in faith and being like, well, I don't really know, but I'm going to go for it. I'm going to take him at his word and take him for what he says. And yeah, that's really cool.
Exactly.
It's encouraging to hear that it worked out for you like that.
Yeah.
What about you? What are
So
some ways?
I've never heard God speak to me in like an audible voice. So I just want to be very clear with that. And I'm always very careful when people are very charismatic. I think we need to take everything with a grain of salt, because I've seen some of my best friends are very charismatic, and some of the people that have been hurt by the most are charismatic.
Wow.
It doesn't make it them bad. It just like, you have to be very careful.
Yeah.
One of the things that I pray pretty consistently almost every day is like, God, give me discernment. I want wisdom. And the Bible talks a lot about like, if you pray for wisdom, God will give you wisdom. And so one of the things, like when it comes to big decisions like work and marriage and all of that, it's like, is this person going to help me glorify God more? And if the answer is yes, if April and I are able to glorify God and serve people in a better capacity as we're together, then I don't want to over spiritualize it and say that April's the only person in the world for me. There are a lot of people out there that I think would be good. There are a ton of people out there that I would not be able to serve God and other people in a capacity. And so that really, like, for me, like, I didn't get like this, like, April's the only one. I just like wanted to be with someone that loved people, had the joy of the Lord, loved God, would be able to support me, had the same values as it relates to kids and all this stuff. And you start getting that list, it's like, well, I don't know if I'm going to ever find somebody.
Totally.
And so it's not one of those things where it's like, you know, I believe that God put April in my life and he made this thing happen. And at the same time, like it was very, very clear, like, God, if there's any doors to slam, please, like, slam it in my face, because I'm dumb.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I pray about most things, business. Like, Lord, if this can honor you and it, like, helps other people, like, let's do it. But like, I care about you. Like, don't, like, I want to humble myself, and always be careful when you pray that, because you might be humbled in the process.
So true.
But like, again, with death being the ultimate metric, it's like, what is the value of our life? It's measured by how much of it was given away. You know, it's like, it's not about me. It's not about money in a bank account. It's not about identity or significance. So it's like all these things. It's like, if you can really be humble and be at that place, God will speak to you, because you don't have, like, a lot of us want to hear God through our own agenda kind of deal.
Wow. That's wow. A lot of us want to hear God through our own agenda. That is some truth. That's some hard truth. One way that I have recognized that God speaks to me sometimes is just like with this impressed thought, where oftentimes I can definitely write it off as like my own thoughts. But for example, and I shared this on my Instagram the other day, but I was at my dad's house and we were just talking about life in general. And he was like, you need to read the parable of the sower and the seed, right?
Totally.
And I've read it and I'm like, okay, like I'll read it again, whatever. And so I go home that day and I don't read it, because I was like, I'm going to read a different book. So I read a book about people that we knew, actually, which was pretty cool. And the next morning I'm like praying and I'm like, God, what do you want me to read? And like immediately, and it's like the very softest little thing where like, it just feels like my thought, right? But immediately it's Mark 4. So I'm like, okay. So I open up Mark 4 and it says, parable of the sower of the seed. And I was like shocked. And so I like texted to my dad. I'm like, Dad, you would not believe this, you know? And then it's cool because now I've learned to just kind of like trust that, you know, is him. And then I always tell him like, look, if that's not you, like, let me know, you know? And I always laugh. I'm like, sometimes I do that. And then I'm like, all right, God, I know this is like ridiculous, but I'm just going to turn to it anyways. Right. And we laugh about it together. I think God's very funny.
Yep.
But that's definitely one way that I've found that he talks to me, as well as through other individuals that I know their hearts are like completely sold out for him. That's been really helpful in my life. And it's been a learning lesson for me in my life too, because there have been times in my life where people who I feel have a lot of wisdom have spoken into my life. And I kind of was like, I should listen to me. Like, I know what's best for my life kind of thing, not realizing that it was probably actually God speaking through them. So I found that like communities has been really helpful for that as well.
Totally.
Anytime that you guys are making a big decision in life, do you guys have kind of like a process for making this decision as a couple?
I would say this is where we're probably not great at. You know how like I was at a Bible study the other day and someone was saying like, hey, whenever I make a decision over $100, like I bring my spouse in. Yep. And I'm like,
oh wow.
In my head, I'm like, okay, like I had to just shut up because like we have payroll, we pay hundreds of thousands of dollars on things. Like there's like, I'll like let April know like, hey, like I bought a business. Like,
yeah, totally.
Like so it's just one of those things where it's like we're like trying to be on the same page, and like spending is really important. So it's like I want each month like us to track our money and let's talk about it. I just think we're at maybe a different place just with business, and like
that makes sense.
You know, I had 4 or 5 businesses when we got married, and so it's just one of those things where when we're making quote unquote big decisions, it's just be in communication, but talk to us in 2 years because we're like, we've only been married 9 months. So
yeah, of course.
It's one of those things. I don't know if you want to add
Yeah.
to any of that.
Yeah, it's a process that we're learning through right now. It's like we want a process, and communication is a big part of marriage, obviously. And we're working on right now of like, how do we best communicate with one another? Like, what makes you tick, what makes me tick, and how can we complement that? How can we, rather than working against it, how can we work together with this? And so we're learning that, and I'm excited to figure out that process. And also it's a journey, and being present in that moment of understanding, like, you know, yes, we want to get there, but like, we need to be in this moment as well.
Yeah.
I think from a financial standpoint, it's figuring out a couple things. It's figuring out what's the bare minimum? Like what is like the bare minimum expectation from a standpoint of finances of like, okay, this is our standard of living. This is what, you know, being really clear with that. And then it all depends on where you want to go. So it's like being really, really clear on like where we're going as a team, as a couple, and then figuring out like, okay, here's the downside, like here's kind of like the upside and downside kind of deal, and getting really clear. And I think what we've been talking about is like, we're really clear on the downside. So I know like to keep us secure, we need like, this is where we need to be at. But like, I do not get a lot of joy to just surviving or just like getting paid. Like I get very, like, I love the concept of like building something that matters, and I'm motivated from that. And so it's one of those things where it's like, I would lose interest in business if it was just something to get money for.
Yeah,
you know?
totally. Yeah, you have to have a deeper purpose and sense of fulfillment from it.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. I think it goes back to like your way of living your life and letting death be the motivator, because it's like, why would you do a job that you don't have purpose and fulfillment at?
I don't know.
So, and here's the thing. I think, you know, we talked a little bit about how people are stuck in these like unconscious patterns, right? And I think for whatever reason, our life journeys have brought us to where we're at now. We own our own business and multiple businesses for you know, and I think that's beautiful. I think some people were grown up in this kind of like the system, this way of living that they've never broken free from. So I think even now they're probably listening to this right now thinking like, well, I'm stuck in a job that I don't like and I feel stuck. You know, so like, what would you say to people that feel stuck in their position? They've always, you know, they went to college, they did the corporate route, they're in corporate, they don't want to be there, but they don't really know another way. And that security of that paycheck is like so keeping them there. Like, do you have any advice at all for them?
I do. I want to hear what your thoughts are.
Well, I believe that people should be living to their full potential as well. And we may never reach that full potential, but we can try. And so when people are in a job that they don't necessarily like, yes, it's a scary thought to get out of that, because you have that security of the money, and you can continue that and then start something you love in the process to then have that job fund what you want to do. And then you can feel a little bit more secure. And it really comes down to two, what do you love to do? Like, what can you not stop talking about? Like, in your free time, what do you want to be doing? Because you can create something from that. You can help people and bring value with whatever that passion or love is. And I just want people to live intentionally too. Like, ever since being with Caleb, like, I've always had this desire that people like should feel loved and special because they have unique gifts and abilities. And so now being with Caleb, it's just been so prevalent in my life of like, my little sister, I want her to realize her worth and her value, and that she can do anything she puts her mind to. She has the strength of Christ in her. And when people don't believe that, if whatever you don't believe that you can do, you're right. Like, so you know, it goes back to that quote, like, if you think you can't, you can't. Like, if you think you can, you can. And so it's like, it's super hard to get out of that mindset of going after your dreams. But if you feel so passionately about it, you can do anything because you love it and you love what you do. And I just want people to realize that you can do anything you put your mind to.
Yeah, so we'll get practical here. Okay?
That's beautiful.
I
That's
love
so beautiful.
I love that. So
We compliment each other well.
Yeah, totally.
So ROR is what Wall Street uses as like the metric that they determine like you'll make decisions off of. So ROR for them stands for rate of return or return on risk. And when I was 20 years old, I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, shouldn't we get paid for results? So why doesn't ROR stand for return on result? And so, like, even at a young age, I was thinking, okay, we need to be, like, I want people to get really clear on what they actually want. What is their result? Let's make that the metric. And then, shocker, live your life to get that.
Yeah.
Okay. So like intentional living is one of those things where it became like the metric. Like instead of financial freedom or like retirement income planning and all this stuff, it's like, okay, what's your dream life? Which is a question that you can answer is, if money wasn't an issue at all, like what would you spend your time doing? And when you say travel and all those things, like get a little bit deeper and say like, what will truly be fulfilling? And then put a dollar on that. Like get practical, because you'll find that the things that you care about most, your family, like the things you truly care about, you'll realize that it doesn't cost that much money to live an intentional life.
Wow.
And so you get really, really clear on what that metric is, and then make that metric how you make decisions on. Let me ask another question is, what is wealth? Well, a lot of people think, okay, wealth is like maybe cash flow and all these things. And it's like, no, wealth is a sum total of your time, your relationships, your talents, and your resources, which is money. And so you're like, are you wealthy? Like Warren Buffett is over 90 years old. He's worth over $100 billion. Emily, you would not trade places with Warren Buffett right now.
Yeah, I bet I wouldn't.
You wouldn't, because of time.
Yeah.
I think he's like 94 years old right now. And so the idea is like, do you realize that you just valued your life on this earth over more than $100 billion? And if people understood that, they would start living totally differently. Like on a macro, we value our time. On a micro, we devalue our time every day.
Wow.
And so it's like, if we can start getting people to say, okay, what do you want? Like if money wasn't an issue, like let's make that the metric, and let's go deeper than just like vacation, because like that does get old. And then it's like, okay, then let's start accounting for, what are we good at? Like, what do I love doing? What is life giving to me? What do I hate doing? And getting self-aware on that. Accounting for your time, accounting for your talents, accounting for, like, you might have $1 million in the bank, you might have no money. That does determine a little bit of the equation. But then the other thing that we need to do is, on the flip side, we need to understand our responsibilities, our roles. And if you're trying to provide for a whole family, like that is different than an idealistic 20-year-old living with his parents.
Right.
You know, like I realized that I had $20,000 when I started Better Wealth, and I had like 0 expenses.
Wow.
So I was in a totally different position than someone who's like in their 40s that have kids. And so it's like that balance of like, understand what you want and be able to account for that, understand that you have one life, but then also like understand your roles and responsibilities, and like, and then figure out how to balance that. But then also realize like majority of people are not making decisions because of fear of what other people think of them.
Wow.
And honestly, until your identity comes from something other than what people think of you, you'll never be free. And it's just one of those things where I can't tell you how many times people that I look up to have their identities tied up into things that are horrible. And that is ultimately controlling their life. And so there's so many things that break this down, but one of the things that we will start on is like, we will not move forward with your money if we don't get 100% clear on what you actually want. And that becomes the metric and the why to be how we make decisions about our time, resources, talents, and abilities.
Wow, that is incredible. I can tell it's not your first time
I
explaining
love this,
all
though.
of that. Yeah,
It's
no.
fun.
And it's so, I love that and I love that you guys work together, because literally she gives us this like overarching just like feeling and drive and passion, and right. And
You're
then he
summing
comes
it up
in.
well.
Yeah. And he comes in and he's like, okay, now here are the steps.
Yep, exactly.
That's beautiful. And we were kind of discussing earlier how, April and I were, how people, they're not clear on where they're going. Right? They get sucked into this like business entrepreneur, no sleep, team no sleep, work 365, and they're chasing this goal. They're chasing a dollar. They're chasing a trophy. They're chasing these different things in these different industries. And yet their relationships are suffering. Their family is suffering, their significant other. They don't have community. They don't feel like they're important and of value to other human beings around them, which is making them feel isolated and alone. We've focused on creating these like online communities that makes it look like we have all these friends and connections and friendships and relationships, but then we're like on the couch by ourselves crying at night, right? Like it's crazy. Like we're in this world where I feel like if you're not very intentional, if you're not conscious and self-aware to what you're doing, where you want to go, and kind of like where you're putting your time, effort, and money, you can easily fall into this trap, fall into this cycle, and then wonder why you have money in your account and you have all these things, yet you're so unhappy. Like, I think it's the biggest epidemic that we have today is this and it's I call it like breaking the matrix, right? You got to break free from this unconscious way of living and choose to go forward in this new intentional way that brings so much fulfillment and so much life like you've never known it. I would say life to me is like this, it's like this like energy source, and and people right now, there's so many people that are dead inside that lack this, and the second that they break free from it, it's like this, it breaks the chains that are all around it, and then it like comes alive inside of them, and then it starts giving this like pulse and this heartbeat, and you get this new momentum and like fire for life. And then when you surround yourself with other people that are like-minded and doing the same in theirs, it just like lights all of your fires just.
And when you realize the little gains that you're making, that feels it even more, because if you're always looking at this big goal, you know, you're always going to be unsatisfied because you're always trying to make the next one, the next one, and nothing is ever fully satisfying you. And so if you're looking at the small gains along the process, that's where you lose that burnout. And you lose that sense of depression maybe because you're like, I'm not measuring up to this or that. And then also setting your own metrics, like rather than letting outside people, you know, interfere and tell you, you know, what you need to accomplish. What about your own accomplishment and what you hope to do?
I think it comes down to identity. It's like if my identity comes from the things I post about or the things that like then it's like, then other people are determining my worth. And so it's just one of those things where we see it all the time. We probably could talk about this on a whole podcast, and just like identity and like where do we find our identity. And a lot of people, like I guarantee the majority of people watching this, like that is, if I could summarize their issue, is their identity is not coming from a truly good source, not coming from themselves or coming from God. It's coming from something else. And when your identity comes from something other than a deeper reason for you to exist, it's a game that you'll never win. And that's why you have really, really rich people in money, miserable, committing suicide because they're not fulfilled inside. Wow.
I think it's so true. And I agree. I think when they put their identity in things that can be so easily taken away,
100%,
that's such a dangerous place to be. You know, even if it's your identity as husband, as wife, right? As mother, as daughter, as whatever it is, whatever role you play in society, if you put it in something that can be taken away from you, that's a scary place to be. But if you put it in something like, you know, I'm a loyal person of service, right? That's something that you can literally apply anywhere. And that's what's cool is once people start to realize who they actually are, they can literally be working at McDonald's, living their purpose out at McDonald's. Does that mean McDonald's is their purpose? No. You know, maybe it's down the road and maybe that's just like a little stop along the way of their journey, but they can actually live out their core values no matter where it is. So they can go from this job to this career to this calling, all without ever changing their job position, just by realizing who you actually are and being confident in that and allowing those attributes to come out.
Yep. I was at a leadership conference at 17 years old, and I saw Andy Stanley speak, and he said, the value of your life is always measured by how much of it was given away.
Wow.
And he's like, Jesus Christ was the best example of this because he literally gave of his life that gave us all the ability to have salvation. And I was thinking, I'm like, okay, what if that could be a core value of like, I'm going to die someday. And at my funeral, people are not going to be saying like, oh, Caleb published this many books, or he did this many podcasts, or he came on some amazing podcast. You know, they're not going to talk about my accomplishments. They're literally going to talk about the times that I interacted with them and helped them experience more life. And then if we make that the metric, we cannot lose. Because if you wake up and I wake up and April wakes up and we're like, hey, we're here to serve people and give of ourselves. Like, what a fulfilling, life-giving life. And guess what? You're going to make more money. You're going to be happy. You're going to have the best relationships because people want to be around abundant, loving, giving relationships.
Oh, 100%. And like, you guys are the people that when you walk in the room, it's like this ball of just energy and light. Like I walked into Alpha Land in April, like you would have thought that we hadn't seen each other in like 10 years, you know, or like, I don't know, like she just got the best news ever. And I was like, oh my goodness, I don't think I deserve this welcome.
It was long anticipated.
It was like the sweetest thing. And that's the thing is I think when you know who you are, when you're you're operating out of your core values, when you are valuing the things that really matter most to you, it shines from the inside out, and you carry that into every single room that you walk into. And I really do believe that those are the people that can literally change the world just by existing, not even with speaking or acting or doing, but actually just by being. And I think, you know, that's something that I've actually really had to learn. And I feel like I can hear my dad right now. I can hear my dad inside my head right now, because he used to always tell me, and I never got it until honestly, like recently, where he would always tell me, he's like, I'm so proud of you for everything that you do, but I just want you to know, even if you did nothing at all, like, you have the most value to me. And I never got that. I was like, if I didn't coach and help these people, and if I didn't put out content to help others and all these things, like, yeah, no, if you did none of that, like, you would hold the same value. And I never understood that until like working through some things, and recently, like, just coming to that realization that, like, wow, that's powerful, you know, and that can change a lot of things. Because I think, you know, I've definitely had to go through seasons of life of realizing that I place a lot of value or just things in other people's hands, right? And especially like growing up, I essentially grew up online, right? So that's kind of difficult, because you don't really, I didn't mean to do that. I just like kind of started documenting things, and then like now we're here. And it's a difficult journey learning how is the best way to like navigate those things. Like we were talking about some stuff before the show of like, how do you decide what to share, what not to share? And it's just changed over time. You know, it's evolved over time. And I've had to learn the hard way in a lot of areas of my life. And when you learn the hard way, number one, for me at least, I don't have to learn twice. You know, when I touch that burner and it's on 10 of 10 and it sears my hand, I'm like, lesson learned, don't need to go down that route again. You know, but once you learn it, I think what's cool is, at least for me, I really feel that like all of our life experiences are so that we can help others. Totally. So sometimes I just kind of joke around. I'm like, I get it, God. Like, I'm just supposed to go through this because I have a platform, and then I can reach more people. But can we stop now?
Like, enough, tapping out. Yeah,
right. If this is jiu-jitsu, I'd tap out right now. It's been a journey. It's been a process. What about you guys? Have you ever had to deal with kind of caring about other people's opinions, or like worrying about what they would think of you? And like, you being so young, like, I'm sure you had to navigate so many people even saying horrible things or just mean or non-supportive things. So how did you navigate those things?
So I was very self-conscious of how I appeared. It's ironic that I actually have, you can't even call this a beard, but there's something growing on my face.
It's
going. And so, I mean, like, this is like not me. Ironically, like, this is like the first time I've ever kind of grown it out.
No way. Yeah, good for you.
But so anyways, I was always told, like, you look super young and all these things. And I'll take you actually back to when I was 12 years old. I had like the most embarrassing moment of my life. I'm in front of my peer group at a Christian camp, and we do like this skit at the end of the camp. And Emily, I don't know what I was doing. I was scared to be in front of people. I totally forgot what I was going to say. And so I just stood on stage, just like didn't know what to say. And then I had like my lines written down, and I remember just reading my line like word by word. And I just like, I don't even remember what we were doing on stage. I just remember like walking down as like a total failure.
Oh my goodness.
And my mom the next day, like, this tells you how amazing like my parents were. My mom the next day says, Caleb, like, the things that you can't control, like your height. And by the way, I'm 5'8". I'm not super short. Like, we keep on talking about it, I promise. But like, I just grew later in life. And so she's like, the things that you can't control, don't worry about. Like, your identity doesn't come in your short, and don't let anybody determine your joy by, like, don't give them that power.
Wow.
But then she said, but the things that you can control, like your reading.
Wow.
Just because you have dyslexia, just because it's harder for you, like, that's no excuse.
Wow.
And Simon Sinek also has a quote that says, the solutions that you find to your weaknesses growing up become your greatest strength.
Say that again. The
solutions that you find to your weaknesses become your greatest strength.
Wow.
And so, again, reading was tough for me, but like my mom was like, that's not a path to just say, like, you know, you have to work harder. So I had friends that were way smarter than me that just took learning for granted and never even graduated college, which, by the way, is not a metric for success. It just shows you that they didn't have the capacity to work through because everything came easy to them. And so even at a young age, like, that was like ingrained in me that, like, people, like, another thing that someone told me, actually the boss at the bank said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so I'm like this 19-year-old kid, like, what is a CEO doing putting me in charge of a investment department, corner office of a bank? Well, it's just, that's a whole nother story in itself. But there's a relationship there. He knew that I cared for people. Like we didn't lose a single client in that transition because I was super well loved, because even though I was young, like I would just listen to people. I worked my butt off to help people. And I think a lot of times people will be like, how in the world were you taken seriously? And I just think it was not in the statements that I made. It was in the questions that I asked. And it was like, I just, even at a young age, like I just worked at honing the listen and like seek to understand. And then I would do everything in my power to try to work with somebody. So I share all these things to say like, it's been a journey, but ironically looking young was never a huge issue. And I just think I was super proactive about it, and I would never let someone surprise me with like, oh, like I didn't know that was an issue that I looked so young. Like I would always be very upfront, but I would also be very proactive with knowing that people are going to bring this up. And so to be forward thinking. And it's like when you can be totally cool with your weaknesses, people can't hold that over you.
That's so true.
And so it's like, if you're self-conscious of something, like get that out there.
Yeah.
And then no one can hold that over you. I think Eminem like talks about that kind of deal.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I said a lot, but it's just one of those things where it really stems from being young, having my mom remind me that my identity doesn't come from what other people say and the things that I can't control, but the things that I can control, like I don't have a pass. And I'm just grateful for both of those.
Yeah, that's huge. What about you, April?
Yeah, totally. So in high school, I began to gain a little bit of weight, and I realized like, oh, like this can't happen. I was always like, this thin high schooler. And so I began, exercising, biking, diving into health and like, what I ate. And that's great. And that's all great because I adopted this healthy lifestyle. And then it grew to be an unhealthy lifestyle of always wondering, oh, am I thin enough or am I in shape enough? And when people would then affirm me that, oh, you're so in shape, or, oh, I wish I had your body. It was affirming me to be like, okay, like I'm on the right track, and can I be even better? And it was always about like other people's affirmations about how I looked. And, over the process of time, exiting high school and running track and all that kind of stuff, like my hormones were out of whack. And so entering college, like I didn't realize they were out of whack, and I just kind of was like, well, whatever, about it. And I continued to be like, okay, I'm gaining a little bit of weight. I'm going to like slow down on my eating now and lack the eating, and I'm going to exercise more. And I became thin, but it became to an unhealthy point of thin. And it was just always this like affirmation of like, oh, I'm always seeking this affirmation of what are people going to think? You go on social media and there's always like images that you're trying to measure up to versus, like I said before, what are your own expectations for yourself and goals for yourself versus letting other people set goals for your body or, you name it. And so over that process, then I began to realize, okay, my hormones are out of whack here. That's telling me that I'm not healthy. And so diving into my hormones and what was out of whack there and getting back to that health of, okay, health is not an image of my body and how I look, but health comes down to, the vital aspects of your life. And, when it came to my hormones, I realized like I needed to get that in check, because thinking long-term, like what if I want to have kids down the road, which I did, I want to be healthy for them. And so getting that in through and working through all of the hormones and everything, I realized, okay, this is what matters. And it's still a constant battle of like, okay, I gain a little bit of weight, but I'm healthy, I'm eating healthy, I'm working out, but I may not be that stick thin person that I used to be, that I felt like I had more affirmation from. And that's okay, because my own expectation now is that I want to be healthy for our future kids or whatever that may be, versus unhealthy and not working properly. And so I've had to overcome a lot of like the aspect of people telling me what I should look like, or always comparing myself to somebody else, because that seems to be the metric I need to be at. And so working through that process, and like I told you earlier, I'm going through the gap and the gain. And this has been incredible for understanding, like realize like where you were in the process of all of this and like what you may not have like in the future. So, if my body is not where I want it to be right now, well, what if I didn't have the health I have right now? Or what if like something went wrong with my body? Then I'd be wishing that I was here right now with the body I have right now that's working properly and that's healthy. And so you have to take a stop in life and be like, okay, like right now I'm healthy and that's what matters. And later on down the road, I might not be. So I need to not take it for granted right now and not let other people's expectations or thoughts or whatever it is that they think I should look like control me, and I can control my own self and realize my own successes for life versus someone else setting that. So I would say that's what I've had to work through the most.
That's so good. And I want to kind of re-mention, so The Gap and the Gain is a book, and do you know who the author is?
Dan Sullivan.
Dan Sullivan. Cool. So that's a book if you guys missed that. So definitely check it out. She was telling me about it earlier. And I think it comes down to gratitude as well. Like just centering yourself in gratitude for what you do have. I, recently hurt my back. So I've been like nurturing this back issue, and it's been pretty bad, honestly. Like I did not expect to take this long to recover. And I found myself getting really disheartened and discouraged and honestly just like a little upset about it because it had been a couple of weeks and I still can't train the way that I want to train. Right. So I'm in this thought process of like being upset about it. I'm not getting this like stress release that I normally get. And then like I just had this moment where I just was like, hold on a second here. I have 2 arms. I have 2 legs. That like I have plenty of friends that have 1 leg or 1 arm. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, that alone is really cool, and I'm really thankful for that because that would be such a different life to have to learn how to navigate that. So I was really able to just kind of ground myself in that. But I think it's normal to kind of fall into a moment of self-pity, or it's even like victim mentality, right? Totally. And it's real too. Like, we're humans, we have real feelings. It's okay to have those feelings. But then I think like if you allow them to manifest, that's a different thing. So I think self-awareness is very important, because if you can become very self-aware to your thoughts, your patterns, your habits, that's when you have the opportunity to change. And I've been really working on my self-awareness for the last 6-7 years or so now. And now I feel like I'm at a point where I'm pretty quick to recognize what I'm doing, or I'm at least self-aware enough to be like, okay, I'm not aware to what I'm doing. And then I go seek out help, right? Like the first time I went to a therapist, I was like, hey, like, what's up? And he goes, so why are you here? And I'm like, my life is great. Like finances are great. Relationships are great. Like I'm just doing great. He goes, so why are you here? And I go, because I'm self-aware enough to know that there's a blind spot. And he was like, okay, let's dig in. And then of course we dug in, and it was like,
it was the best.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you: is how do you get self-aware? Because that's like everyone's saying being self-aware. It's one of our core values is like be self-aware of our strengths and weaknesses. How does someone watching this, like what's the framework that they can go through to like become more self-aware?
There's a lot of things that have helped me in my self-awareness. One thing that's really easy and practical is reading books. I would read a book, and the author would talk about like their previous thoughts, patterns, beliefs. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's me. Right. And so I would identify with them. I would see how they would work through that thing. And then I would just apply that to my life and work through that. One way that's really practical on a daily basis that I love and I teach in my EvolveX program is daily reflection. So like at the beginning of every single day, write down, what is your intention for the day? Like, how do you choose to show up today? And maybe it's like, I intend to be a source of love. And so at the end of the day, and there's multiple things in the morning, right? But at the end of the day, it's daily reflection. What did I do great? Where do I have room for growth? And so in that moment, you're looking at, okay, well, today I said on my excellence list that I was going to research how to build a website. I said that I was going to be a source of love in every room that I walked in. I was going to choose love. I wasn't going to choose the other option, right? So in your reflection, you can say, wow, the grocery store clerk was really mean to me and I yelled back. Like, that's self-awareness to be like, this is how I intended to be, and this is how I actually was. And then there's a little action step area where you can say, okay, how can I take action to do better tomorrow? Right. So it's creating those actions already. And then the next day going again. So, and then I also like to do like a weekly reflection, right? Okay. At the beginning of the week, I was all motivated. I was all excited. I said I was going to eat on my diet. I said I was going to get 4 training sessions in, and I was going to attend church on Wednesday, or a coaching call or a mentorship call, whatever it is. At the end of the week, reflecting, like, what did I actually do? Where am I actually at? And then, there's levels to self-awareness, obviously. So I think those are like some really practical first steps into it. Another way is becoming self-aware of how you react and respond to people, situations, unforeseen events. When you fail and mess up, how do you handle that? Yeah. Right. And getting a really clear picture of where you're currently at, and then working on it. There's a lot of people that they have really good intentions. I have this one client who she was like, I'm not going to lie. She's like, I really want to like be a good person when me and my boyfriend are arguing. And she's like, but he starts talking and I just go off. And she was, I'm really struggling with it. And she's like, I want to be loving. I want to be kind and respectful, but I just get so mad and so angry. And so it's cool because we were able to like work through to figure out that at the root of that actually had nothing to do with him. Yeah. There was bitterness there. There was unforgiveness there. There was other things that had nothing to do with him that were just coming out in pressure moments. And that's the thing is pressure reveals true character. Yep. And pressure really reveals like where you're actually at in your life. Anyone can be a person of good character when everything is going well. Yep. But when things go wrong, that really shows, it gives you a clear picture of where you're at. And it's not for you to judge yourself or to shame yourself, because sometimes that picture is not very pretty, right? Myself included. Sometimes you're like, that wasn't my best moment. And that's actually where I'm at. You know, I'm not where, you know, you're not, the self-awareness is not on your best day when you're on your diet, on your nutrition, you're just sending love to everybody, right? Yeah. It's on your worst day when everything's going wrong, and it's how you show up in those moments. But what's cool is as you go on this personal development journey, you will start to recognize that those worst days get better. Like you start to respond better. So even though it may not be your ideal response, it may not be the ideal way to communicate to your partner or to something bad that happened or a stressful situation, it's better than it was before. And when you're able to see that, and like you were mentioning, really appreciate those small wins, those small moments, then you can really build on that. And then before you know it, you look back 5 years ago and you're like, wow, I'm a different person. Yeah. I'm just such a better version of myself. And here's the thing, those beautiful things of your character, those beautiful things were there all along. Yeah. Just, it takes a lot of work to start to really allow those to fully shine through. Because I really do believe that people are who they are, you know, but whatever, life circumstances, traumatic things, events, they start to shape how we handle life, how we look at it, how we respond to people. And so I think it takes a lot of work to undo a lot of what life kind of did, if that makes sense.
100%. Mm-hmm.
I would just echo everything that you say and just encourage everybody to take the time, ask the questions, go to people that love you, and truly be like, okay, I will not judge you or treat you any differently. Like, what am I really, really good at? And what do I'm not good at? And like be willing to lean into honest truth, like honest conversations, because some of the self-awareness is hard to hear, but it comes back to where our identity is, and it's like, so it's just one of those things where I can't echo that enough of like, do the work to be self-aware, because if you're not, you're like working at a fraction of the rate that you can.
So true. And it's funny you mentioned that. You just reminded me something else that I did. This is so like me. I sent my closest friends and family members an anonymous quiz, like section that I made. And truly, it's on like a website where they can submit anonymously. Wow. And I was like, I asked them for everything about me, the good, the bad, the ugly.
See, that's amazing.
What are my blind spots? I wanted to know. And what's funny is I was able to see who wrote what for certain things, because like they would write in their voice. They like didn't try to hide it at all. Yeah. And I'm like, bruh, I know that's you, to my brother, you know? But like, it's interesting because my brother actually, he's one, and I think I've talked about this before, but he kind of like woke me up a little bit to an area that I had zero attention. You know, he was like, you are stuck in your own little bubble when it comes to these things, and you know, you're not involved in these things at all. And at first I was kind of like, I just didn't even know that I should be, right? Like I wasn't aware, right? That's what becoming self-aware is. Like sometimes you just don't know until you know. And then when you know, now I do believe that you have a responsibility to act on that thing, right? Totally. So, and that was really definitely powerful for me. But yeah, I think
you should make that quiz available.
Oh no, absolutely not.
No, not like for other people to use for themselves.
Oh, gotcha. I'm like, are you okay? Yeah, so I'm like, hold on, let's talk about that, right?
Like any other ideas?
But I'm serious. Like
that, that's a terrible idea.
And again, I'm not putting like I don't know how you operate with your community, but like if people had the ability to do that, think about the growth that would have.
That's very true.
I want to share one quick thing. Is in our leadership team as a company, we have 6-7 people in this group. We do this exercise once a year where you're on the hot seat and everyone talks about things that you're good. Like, and then the things that you're like is a weakness or is a blind spot.
Wow.
And so again, like this is super hard, but it's like, we have such a culture of like, hey, I'm going to tell you that you suck in these 10 areas, but I love you.
Wow.
And so the common theme that I got is like, Caleb, like you're extremely prideful in this area, and your pride manifests in this way and in this way. And like, to be completely frank, I became a better leader because of just sitting there listening.
Wow.
And not judging and realizing that, yes, they're correct. Like, well, again, my identity as a company, like when people would be critical or like would like do certain things to better wealth, like I took that personally because my name is attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that would show up as I lead as a form of pride, because I would respond a different way, or I would lead a certain way through my own self-image. And so it's just one of those things where it's like, I can't tell you how valuable that experience is. And it's also encouraging because people will usually go above and beyond on the things that they really enjoy about you. But it's like, man, we all have crap in our life. And it's like, you're either the person that knows it and is working on it, or is someone that's just has a blind spot and is a less effective human being because you're willing to be not self-aware.
So good. And I want to mention my reaction to that real quickly. If people weren't able to like understand that, is like, I would never release something like that to like the online hundreds of thousands of people, the public, right? Because I really believe that when you take constructive criticism, it should be with people that share similar core values with you, that they really know you, that you really like value their opinion and their judgment, right? So like for you, it's the people that you work with at all times, right? So you guys see into each other's workspace and lives, and you're really able to speak into that. So I just wanted to mention that because clarification for anyone listening, we don't recommend letting anyone speak into your life. Some people will come just to tear you down.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. And I didn't know how horrible of a human being I was until I started a YouTube channel.
Totally.
I was like, wow, like this is horrible. I'm glad my identity doesn't come from, this person chatting.
Oh my gosh, 100%.
Like,
Susan, we see you.
Totally.
I also think like using books or the Bible, to filter that down as well. And it's going to take a lot of self-reflection as you're reading those books, and self-awareness as you go through it. Be like, wow, I just did that, or that sounds like me right now. And then taking the time to reflect over that and then change in that process. So like using people is an amazing source because they see all the things that you don't necessarily see, even when you reflect. And then also, the books or that you may read, that personal development books or the Bible, is what I find to really filter down my life and be like, wow, I'm really convicted there. Or that's a great example of what I'm doing right now. And how can I change this? And then, like you mentioned before, of like how I was saying, recognize the little wins, because when you recognize those little wins, you're reflecting on those little wins. Well, okay, that was a win. And how can I be better at that now? Yeah. And you grow in that process.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I feel like we could talk for probably hours about all of this. Okay, so to wrap the episode up, because I know you guys have, you have your own things to get to. Thank you again for leaving early. To wrap it up, it is the month of love. So, okay, we have this holiday, right, called Valentine's Day. And I feel a mixture of ways about it, right? Because it's like this manufactured holiday of love. And I feel like it encourages people to just overspend and all of that. So I'm actually curious on two standpoints. Maybe we can do two questions. Number one, I actually want to know the financial viewpoint or perspective that you have towards Valentine's Day. And then number two, how does Valentine's Day impact the way that you love your partner?
So one thing that we didn't even get into in this podcast is one friction point that I have with April is I hate spending money. And like we're doing great.
And I'm a very frugal person.
And April's a pretty frugal person.
By all means, that does not mean I'm like this huge spender.
Yeah.
And so literally like we'll be like, I'll spend $25,000 on a mastermind business, all these things. And like going out to dinner and spending $100 for dinner is like, and that what that tells you is the thing, like I have a values problem.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm valuing business for why? Because business is going to get us more money so that we can, you see where that logic breaks down. But it was one of the things that I had to get really, really clear. It's like, okay, why do I struggle spending? And it's not just April. It's like always. Like I do not like spending money on myself, but I'll spend $600 on a microphone because so it's just, so that's a whole conversation that we don't have to get into right now. But when it comes to Valentine's and when it comes to Christmas, like I didn't get her a Christmas gift. I didn't get her a birthday gift.
Caleb.
She's not getting a Valentine's gift.
Caleb.
Emily's like, this is going south.
You're just driving the knife right in.
So
Wow.
but here's the deal. So this is the thing that I might give.
I
the
opened
wrong
up a
answer.
can I was not prepared for.
I'm not really.
I do not like. It's like, why would I overspend money on a dinner? Like it's like supply and demand. Like do things that I'm probably like digging myself a grave.
You are 100%.
Yes.
So,
This is bad.
Yes.
This is pretty bad.
To say, I'll just, my final thoughts are figure out what you value, and we've been working on it. I mean,
Okay.
it's one of those things that we have been, but yeah, I'm not a big Valentine's person. Emily's like,
That
all right.
answer.
And Christmas.
So-
and
But let's talk about it because I feel like
Yeah,
again, I know April well, and we just like the things that we value.
Mhm.
Like we're really clear in what we value, and we're able to live a dream life. Like we've traveled. How many places have we gone just since being married? We've
too
traveled.
many to count.
Wow,
weeks.
really?
I try
That's
to take
so
April
cool.
on all of my business trips,
Wow.
and so
So
it's
I've
like
been to Mexico in November, and it's for a business trip, and I love to travel. So it's an incredible experience where I'm learning in a beautiful location.
So it's just one of those things where it's like, if April really, really valued, like I feel loved if I get like a Valentine's flowers and stuff like that would obviously go into the equation. But it's like, I would much rather spend our time on something that I don't feel obligated to do, but it's like something that's like actually moving the mission forward. And so that's a double-edged sword because I like value the mission of what we're up to, and that somewhat trumps a lot of the short-term things. And so it's like, buying flowers and chocolate and writing cards, like all those things are important, and I'm like learning to do it. I just hate being told, like you realize that like Valentine's Day is like a manufactured
100%, yeah.
commercial holiday where
Yeah.
people are selling. So it's like that kind of stuff is like, okay, most people are not intentional in their relationships, and they take a rain check
Totally.
and like, oh, I'm gonna go spend money
Yeah.
on Valentine's. And so it's just one of those things where I don't get a pass, but I'm not trying to justify. It's just one of those things where like we're really, really intentional with our life, and I don't even know what we're doing. I'm probably going to be traveling.
It
somewhere.
sounds like nothing.
It sounds like nothing. His
No
birthday is the day after, so
So wait, are you doing something for your birthday?
No, but that's the thing. It's like I'm consistent on this because literally
Yes.
April asked me, "What do you want to do for birthday?" I'm like, "What does it
I want to
matter?"
do a regular day.
Okay, so can I share
So I have
thoughts?
zero. Like, yeah, I don't have
Please.
stuff tied up into a day.
I
And
get
that's-
it. Yeah. No, I totally get it. And I'm with you on that. I've been really lucky. My dad has always kind of ingrained into me like, hey, if you can't make Christmas, come spend time with us another day, right? Because I lived away for 7 years, and I always appreciated that freedom to enjoy each other and to have those relational moments when we were able to have them. But one thing that just really keeps coming to mind, right, is that I see so clearly that like you are so mission driven and purpose driven, and that is so beautiful, and you were going to like tear up the world, but like we are so meant to enjoy the fruits of our labor. And I know that you enjoy the fruits of your labor by laboring, but like we are also meant to rest and just enjoy, like enjoyment just for the purpose of enjoyment, for no other gain, for no other value, just enjoyment. So I feel like, you could,
It's an area that
It's
in
funny you mentioned that.
self-awareness.
He just mentioned that like yesterday, where he's just like, one thing that I want to be more intentional with is recognizing that Sabbath and that rest and being okay with resting, because he's been on that overdrive for all his life.
I get
Because
that.
Yeah.
your greatest asset is yourself. And so attention ultimately becomes one of the greatest currencies that you have. And I don't give April my best when it comes to attention, because if your mind's on other things. And so it's the part of being self-aware. Like,
So honest of you to just say that. Wow.
yeah, because my identity is not in what people think of me. And I want this to be like, I want people to know like this is something that we're currently working through,
Wow.
because I can justify in future. Like, I can't tell you how many examples I can justify in future, but now that I'm married, I'm not going to sacrifice our most precious years and regret, but it's been the toughest thing because I can measure business. I can measure sacrificing X, Y, or Z so that we can create X, Y, or Z on the back end. It's tough when it comes to a relationship because you can't really measure it. And that's the thing I'm
Question for
working
you.
on. Yep.
How many people have you unexpectedly lost in your life to death?
One person that was like a father to me.
Okay. If April was to die tomorrow,
Totally. That's exactly the mindset that I like. I think about that all the time.
Yeah. Because I feel like that can be a really good motivator to slow down and be present, right? Because I get it. Like, I am hardwired the same way. I've had to work through that overdrive, because that's why you are the way that you are. That's how you got here.
Yep.
But like, there's had to come this point in my life where I realized I've been working so hard to get somewhere. And I just woke up one day and I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm here. Like, this is actually it. And this is literally the only day that we get. We actually don't get another day.
Right.
And so I think it should consist of ingredients, and we should do our damn best in every area of those.
Yes. I think the tough thing is where's the balance? And that's where I struggle with, because yes, if April died today, yes, that's a great question. And ultimately that's the ultimate filter, but it's like, I'm so extreme from the standpoint of like, it's something that I'm currently working on. The tough thing is I actually don't know the answer to, is it taking a day off a week? Is it
literally look at the Bible? Yes. The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Like, you were so biblically focused, like, yes.
No, but what I'm saying is like, what does that look like from a standpoint of like, what does that look like on a day-to-day
Enjoy
basis?
the fruits of your labor on that day, rest, nap. And I know that sounds horrible to your brain, because all you want to do is work, right? And it'll take a lot of uncomfortable times. You're going to feel uncomfortable doing it, but maybe you can kind of like get your feet wet, right? Right now, if you're working every single day, maybe say, okay, on Sundays, I'm going to wake up and do my best work in the morning. If that's when you do it right now, do a set amount of time and set boundaries for yourself, right? Slowly start to like change those boundaries. You'll get in. It's kind of like, just get your feet wet, and then you'll go a little deeper.
Emily, you can be our accountability partner.
Yeah, no, I would love that. Here's the thing too. I get it, because I used to never take a single day off. So it's been a long journey and a long process for me, really valuing that and understanding that. And man, let me tell you what, if you think that you're working at 100% capacity right now, you're not. Like, when you really take that, and not just that rest, but when you get to the place of, okay, this is uncomfortable, I don't enjoy doing this, it's going to be weird. You guys will probably feel some like uncomfortable in your relationship, because she'll be like, well, I don't want you to resent me, right? So it'll feel like uncomfortable. But if you will push past that uncomfortable part, you guys will probably connect in a way that you have not connected yet, and you will get to deeper. Just I can like taste it, not in a weird way, but like just deeper, more fruitful, more delicious like parts of your relationship and your connection. And there's so much joy and fruit, and there's things in that oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow. No, I actually feel that so hard. Like, there are things in the rest that are waiting for you, like presents underneath a Christmas tree, literally. And you're going to unwrap them and be like, oh.
Yeah. I'm curious what April has to say about this.
Long story short, to sum it all up, yes, this is something we are working through. I mean, it's very accurate that, yes, it's something we're working through, and we'll get there, and it's going to take time. I understand that. And also, like, it took a little bit of time for me to realize as well that resting is okay and being present with people. Like, ever since moving away from family, I'm like, oh my goodness, the time that I have with them now, which is only a few times a year, is so precious. Where I'm like, the next time I see my little sister, she's going to be another inch taller. I mean, I feel like she grows all the time, and she's going to be matured in this personality area. And I don't want to miss those days with those people when I'm with them. And so recognizing that today with marriage, each day goes by where it's like another day is by that we could have worked on this, or we could have grown together in this, or we could have prayed more together in this. And so that just moving away from family has really come to the conclusion in my mind of like, I don't want to take each day for granted.
Yeah.
And so now being married, like you can look at a life as, oh, it's a long life. And also you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so we have so many things that we want to fulfill for the Lord, or whatever that may be. And yes, time is ticking away, but that also includes our relationships. So our marriage is one thing where, time is ticking away, and we can do so many powerful things together versus just alone. And so when we're working on something together, like something beautiful can come from that. And so realizing that another day passed where we could have been working on something together. And so we're working on that. That's a process.
Yeah.
But what Valentine's Day means in regards to loving your partner in a maybe a different way, better, whatever that may mean, is so talking about the intentional living piece and being present with each day, like, you know, why don't we just think of Valentine's Day as everyday thing, where it's like recognizing the love of our life and spending time with them and spending a little chunk of the day where it's just like you're present with one another. And Valentine's Day can, yes, be fun, where you can, you know, maybe do something a little extra special together and have that fun moment. And it can also be that manufactured holiday as well, where it's just that, oh, it's just, I have to do this because I have to do this. And, oh, I have to get the chocolates because that's what the day tells me to do. And so people get into that zombie mentality of, well, you know, this is just how people do it. And rather than taking that piece, be like, well, you know, why can't we just think like that every single day, but not in that manufactured way, in the way of, I want to be present with the one I love.
And I talked yesterday, well, it's on the Monday message that went live yesterday compared to the show, about how love can be like such an expression of so many different things, right? You can see love in the expression of nature, God's creation. You can see love in the smile of a stranger. So like look for all of those expressions of love, and I feel that you'll find it.
I love that so much.
Amazing.
Today has been amazing. Thank you guys so much for being on today's show. And thank you for your openness and vulnerability. That you guys full sent it. Like people you normally don't talk about like kind of what they're processing or going through. So I thought it was really cool that you guys just really openly shared that.
Thanks, Emily. This is
Thank you.
an honor.
Thank you for all that you do. And we appreciate you so much.
So thankful for your friendship.
I am for you guys as well. Shout out your podcast real quick one more time.
Yes.
And where to find you and just everything. And if you have any coaching or anything that you offer, just everything, plug it all.
Well, you can follow the Better Health Podcast, subscribe, rate, review, and I'm
yes, girl,
the typical bitch. I'm coming out with a new season, and so I'm very excited about it because it's a lot of connections that I made along the way versus just people that, you know, I've come into contact with through someone else. And so I'm excited to release those interviews and share more health. And this is not just health as in like fitness, it's in nutrition, it's in, you know, your mind and your emotional health, spirituality, all those things. And so you can follow me on Instagram at Better Health Podcast, also Mrs. April Guilliams. I'm in the process of my website right now. So if you go there, it's in construction mode, but it's soon to be aprilguilliams.com or betterhealthpodcast.com. They all go to the same thing.
Awesome. Caleb?
So Caleb Guilliams on just all the social medias. I'm not at your level.
It's all fake.
But, you know.
It's all a facade.
But
it's numbers on a screen.
betterwealth.com is our company. Our mission is to unlock, you know, your financial life and help you live more intentionally. And so that's like what we do. And so if people email me at caleb@betterwealth.com, and you mention this podcast, I'll get you some resources that can help you be more intentional as it relates to your money. And so, yeah, betterwealth.com and caleb@betterwealth is my email. And I'm just so grateful to be here.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. And all of their links will be down below. So just check the description box on YouTube, check the show notes on the podcast feed, and I will see you guys for another episode of Evolve with Emily. Bye, guys.